Okay, quick music disclaimer here. I do not own the rights to this music, which belongs to the rightful owner, who is the intoxicating mind of Dr. Frankenstein. So he made my intro and my outro, and I hope you guys enjoy. Check them out on Spotify and YouTube, and no copyright infringement is intended. Have a good day.
A clear choice of good versus evil, of right versus wrong.
Twisted Tales.
Due to some violent content, parental discretion is advised.
Alright, it's been a bit. I apologize. I'd like to welcome you back to Twisted Tales, folks. Now, the last episode that we left off on Ted Bundy here through his reign of terror was on Lake Sammamish. So this actually turned into a police investigation where they had the name of the abductor, and his name was Ted. This really turned up the heat for Bundy, so he dipped out to Utah by this time. Now, he was getting a bit careless and shit like that because he didn't really fucking care anymore. He had like no place to fucking take them back to and everything, right? Like he would in Washington and stuff like that. But also, like he was just being a dummy. Like he was using his fucking first name. He was using his actual Volkswagen Beetle, you know, and he was just creeping people out, right? And he actually used his Beetle to like abduct his victims and shit, right? Just being a total creep to the point that some women that he tried to abduct felt that something was off and they didn't go with him. And with all the missing women in Washington now, he was definitely on police's radar. So it just wasn't feasible for him to stick around and be identified for continuing his work in one place. So what he did, he ended up leaving his job at the Emergency Services Department in Olympia, Washington, because he pretty much left in a panic. Because police were like, what the fuck, there's so many missing girls, right? So he fucked off over to Utah. And this is one of the four corner states, actually shares a border with Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico. And another funny thing here, the crimes actually slowed down once he left. Utah back in the 1970s was a period of like significant growth, changes. This was mainly marked by both cultural and political developments. Even the university campuses, including like the University of Utah, they saw significant student activism and protests reflecting broader societal concerns. The violent crime rate in Utah increased significantly between the 60s and 70s as Utah's population increased by 18.9% between 1960 and 1970. Placing it as the 36th most populous state. So, I mean, there was tons of debauchery going on, right? So this is where Bundy ventured to. And it was a 12-hour drive away from Washington for a total of like almost 800 miles. I mean, that'll sure give him like the buffer zone that he needs to attend school and creep on college chicks. And Bundy's ability to live a double life continues on in this episode. And obviously, like, who the fuck would suspect Bundy, the clean-cut law student? He had no adult criminal record, you know. And like I said in previous episodes here, like, while police tried to put things together back in Washington, Utah was this new playground. And the thing is here that, like, cops didn't share information with each other about cases and stuff and missing people, right? I mean, 'cause jurisdiction and all that shit. Like, all that stuff in Washington fucking stayed in Washington. Now, whatever Bundy happened to do in Utah here was going to stay in Utah, right? They weren't going to collab with each other's jurisdictions on crimes because back then, the criminal justice system struggled with sharing information about like wanted subjects and missing persons between jurisdictions and with the public. So Bundy ended up finding an apartment in Salt Lake City's avenues in September of 1974. So he resided in a rooming house at 565 First Avenue in Salt Lake City. and this was from 1974 to October of 75. So he lived on the front right side, second floor of the building, in room number 2. And over time, actually, this was changed to room number 5 because all his crimes, everything came out right. Now, the building actually had a fire escape that Bundy utilized to enter his second floor room without being seen. He suspected of bringing like some of his Utah victims back to the room via the fire escape, right? And the rooming house windows also provided access to a utility room where Bundy is believed to have stored photos and souvenirs of his murders and all that stuff. So the reason he went there is because he got a second acceptance letter from college here. So he wanted to go to law school, so he moved to Salt Lake City, Utah. And he studied the first year law curriculum for the second time and found the classes like very incomprehensible. He didn't really give a shit about school, right? He was more into like fucking gonna go kill women and stuff. So he settled in, he attended some of his classes, and he socialized with some of his classmates and shit. And Bundy spent about a month here before he got back into the swing of things here. He picked up his habits again, and now he's almost into double digits with women that he abducted and then murdered. He's just a college student. Nobody actually knew that he was like on the run from police or anything, right? To everyone else, he was just another University of Utah student, nothing more. And yeah, like I said, Bundy just went right back into his thing, and his thing was killing young women. Now, the first victim of his Utah venture would be a woman by the name of Nancy Wilcox. She was born July 4th of 1958, so she was 16 years old when Bundy met up with her. And Ted had been in the area as he filled up his Volkswagen with fuel. These were all at the South Temple Chevron in Salt Lake City, Utah. So all this was later found out and everything, right? So Monday, September 30th of 1974, he purchased $4.50 worth of gas, which is approximately 8.5 gallons. Tuesday, October 1st, he purchased 7.3 gallons. Wednesday, October 2nd, 1974, it was $4.75 worth of gas, so 8.7 gallons. And a little bit about his vehicle here. Bundy's 1968 VW Beetle had a fuel tank that had a capacity of 10.6 gallons of gasoline. On the days before, of, and after Nancy Wilcox's murder, he filled up his tank nearly 3 times, so this fucker was prepared to travel. On October 1st of 1974, phone records indicate that Bundy called Liz Clofer in Seattle. This was about 10:30 p.m., and they spoke for about 17 minutes or so. So, like I said, they later found out he was in the area and shit, gas receipts and whatnot, right? Now, Nancy was a white American female, 5 foot 6 inches, 120 pounds. She had blonde hair, brown eyes, and she was last seen wearing blue corduroy slacks and a blouse or dress, which would have been a size 9. Shoe size was 6.5. She was very active in her local Mormon church when she disappeared. Now, the time she disappeared was October 1st of 74 in Holiday, Utah. And this is a city in central Salt Lake County, Utah, founded by a guy named John Holiday. He was an early settler, I guess. He and his family were early LDS, Latter-day Saints pioneers in Colorado, Utah, and California. So the more you know. Nancy was a junior at Olympus High School, and she had a job as a waitress. Nancy was apparently having some trouble at school here. The school was at the point of kicking Nancy out of school several times. There's a couple of reasons for that, though. She was continually coming late to class. She was not very motivated. She had some issues trying to get her assignments completed on time. Things like that. And Nancy also had a brother who goes to Olympus School. He also had problems at school, too. Now, some of her friends mentioned that Nancy was very mixed up at the time and She was like not really talking about being depressed or anything, but she was just down in the dumps. Not to the point of like suicide or anything like that. Now, since Nancy was having problems at school, her mom thought that the only reason Nancy went to school was to be near her friends. She had no interest in her subjects whatsoever, so her mom suggested that perhaps she should quit school and get a job if she was that unhappy. But Nancy didn't care for that idea. And according to some close friends, Nancy did not get along with her parents, especially her father, and she never talked over her problems with her parents or anything like that. She just mostly did that with friends. Her mother said that Nancy's a very shy person who relates well on a one-to-one basis. However, when she's in a group, she's very quiet. She will not participate in any of the activities, and also she could be very high-strung at times. Now, her father was Herbert Gerard Wilcox Jr. He was born on September 19th, 1928, up in Salt Lake City, Utah, USA. And he passed at the age of 79 due to heart failure. This was up in Murray, Salt Lake County, Utah, USA. But during his life, Herb actually had a fondness for the Lord. He served as Latter-day Saints mission to South Africa in 1946. Upon returning, he went to work at the Auerbach Company, and this is like where he met his future wife, Connie. The two were married in Salt Lake City Temple. They were blessed with 6 beautiful children, David, Richard, Thomas, Nancy, Susie, and James. And the couple was married for some 58 years. Later on, Herb was a prominent businessman. He worked for the First Interstate Bank as a property manager / vice president for about 25 years. And he was also a master gardener. And his family say that he could turn any plot of ground into a Garden of Eden. I mean, that's how good this guy was. So that's just a little bit on Nancy's father. Nancy's mother was Connie Mortison Wilcox, born August 21st, 1931, up in Bennington, Bear Lake County, Idaho, USA. And she was the daughter of Homer Mortison and June Cadwell Mortison. And they were also from Bennington, Idaho. Unfortunately, Connie passed on August 24th of 2017 at the age of 86, and this is up in Salt Lake City. Now, it says here that Connie actually lived her life through art and everything. She loved art to the fullest. Art was just something that she truly enjoyed. Connie also had a passion for gardening, scrapbooking, and other crafting, miniatures and stuff like that. And she also loved the color purple, flowers, and butterflies. And her friends say that she always went out of her way when she met someone, right? Try to make them feel very special in an uplifting, positive way. So back to Nancy here. This was on the first evening of October in 1974. So, like I said, she was a typical teenager. She had an argument with her parents that countless families have experienced tons of times. And this time, this was one about a boy. And it was Tuesday night after dinner. Her boyfriend had come by to visit, but her father sent him away before Nancy could see him. So the whole dispute seemed to revolve around the fact that Nancy's boyfriend, John, would often park in the family driveway. And his old pickup truck that he had like this habit of leaking oil. So Nancy's father didn't want him leaving oil there, right? So he asked him not to park there. And after arriving home after a long day of work one day, he found his daughter's boyfriend's truck in the driveway yet again. So this is after he told him not to park there. So the two men exchanged words. John drove off pissed off, and he didn't see Nancy. So all this was because he didn't want him parking in the driveway and fucking it up. Now, her boyfriend, John, he was on the school wrestling team, football team, so, he was a good dude, I guess. So Nancy got super upset about the whole ordeal here. She was a bit frustrated, and she stormed out of her home. Perhaps this was in hopes of finding her boyfriend, or maybe this was just a way to, blow off some steam, clear her head in the cool night type deal, right? Something along those lines. And her neighborhood was one that she walked through a million times before. And this time, it just happened to be 1,000,001. Nancy was last seen about 9 p.m. leaving her home in the vicinity of Arnett Drive, and Nancy never came home that night. Parents called police. They were pretty worried about her by now, and an investigation came through, so they were searching for Nancy. Her mother, Connie, mentioned later that the minute Nancy went out the door, I had the strangest feeling. And her father, Mr. Wilcox, who was a very quiet dude here, her mom was a little bit more outgoing. He was also upset about the whole ordeal, right? His daughter was missing. Authorities had initially classified her case as a runaway. This was most likely due to her leaving all mad and in a hurry. And yeah, it wasn't in the media much either. I mean, it was just another teenage runaway, right? So this kind of kept her story from gaining the attention that it deserved. This was a mistake that police would soon realize too, because numerous other girls had disappeared in the area as well. Now, the initial report was done by Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office. The responding officer was Ken D. Moeller with the Juvenile Division, and the address of the incident was 2409 East, 3850 South. Now, the suspect's friends and family here, they had attempted to contact like the girl's boyfriend to see if she went over there and all that, but all it got was negative results. They also contacted relatives in Brigham City, and they thought that she might be there. Now, that's a city in Box Elder County, Utah, and it has a population of like a little over 19,000. I believe 19,650 to be honest. Now, Nancy's brother had rode around the county on his motorcycle looking for his sister, and he still turned up nothing. And the sheriff's office refused to investigate Nancy's disappearance until nearly a month later. This is because they insisted that due to her age and under the circumstances of her departure, she was simply just another teenage runaway and certainly would show up soon. And since no bodies turned up in like the Salt Lake area or anything, police weren't yet on high alert. And Jamie Hayden, this is a member of the family, she had called several times from Utah State University in Logan, inquiring if Nancy had returned home yet. And everybody was just worried for her, right? And it said here at one point during the investigation, the family had received a threatening letter in the mail, telling the parents to stop talking to the cops about Nancy Wilcox. And this was around November 19th, 1974. So police took the letter to Olympus School to see if anybody had recognized the handwriting, and this led police to a dead end here. But the letter was held on to by police. Now, one of Nancy's friends recalled a time before she went missing where a dude had tried to pick her up in a car. Now, the car was a green Capri, and the friend had gotten the license plate number. So it came back to a dude named Carl. So this dude was questioned on this, and he said that when he stopped to ask Nancy if she needed a ride, Nancy asked him if he was a friend of someone that she knew or something like that, right? And when she found out that he didn't know any of her friends, she declined and said that she doesn't ride with strangers. Now, this dude Carl had worked for the Salt Lake Tribune. This is a newspaper published in the city of Salt Lake City, Utah. The Tribune is owned by the Salt Lake Tribune, Inc. It's a non-profit corporation. And the newspaper's motto is Utah's independent voice since 1871. Now, originally, it was known as the Mormon Tribune. This is by like a group of businessmen led by former members of the Church of Jesus Christ, or the LDS Church. William Godbey, Elias L.T. Harrison, and Edward Tullidge. These guys disagree with the church's economic and political positions. So after a year, the publishers changed the name to the Salt Lake Daily Tribune, and then the Utah Morning Gazette. But after that, they shortened it to the Salt Lake Tribune. This is Utah's largest newspaper, known for independent voice and in-depth local news coverage. And in 2019, it became the first traditional newspaper in the U.S. to transition to a nonprofit organization. And it's dedicated to delivering news to millions of readers through like websites now and mobile apps and all that stuff. And it has a long history of covering Utah. It's actually been recognized with the Pulitzer Prize for local reporting. So there's some facts for you. Police also took a copy of his handwriting to try and match it to the handwriting that was on the letter. Now, this dude also consented to a polygraph test, and the results came back negative, so this dude got cleared. And police ended up going through all of Nancy's belongings in her room. They looked through her purse, they noticed that they couldn't find her social security card, so they contacted her last employer, which was Arctic Circle, and they gave the police the insurance number. Now, they wanted to see if she had been working anywhere else, shit like that, right? And the Arctic Circle was the last place that she worked. So this is a drive-in location, and it's located at 33rd South and 20th East in Salt Lake City. And the building still stands today, but it's now a coffee shop. Please talk to her friends a little bit more here just to see if they recalled anything from around the time that she went missing, or if they had heard anything new. And as the investigation went on, Nancy was now missing for some 6 weeks. The family actually called a psychic later on here, and she had told them that she believed Nancy might be found at the Salt Lake City High School. Now, one of her brothers at one point had posed as a student at East High School. This was just in hopes of finding his sister walking down the hall or something like that, right? A little bit of a stakeout, but that also failed. And Nancy's mom talked about how she felt about her missing daughter. She said, "I think the one thing is not to become bitter. It ruins your life, and it ruins your family's life. Nothing gets accomplished, and it hurts." And sometime later, detectives Jerry Thompson and Ben Forbes, they were working on the case here. They were just trying to find out what happened, find some similarities between the missing girls. People have talked about the night of Nancy's disappearance here over time. Some say that they had seen a yellow Volkswagen Beetle, and she was a passenger in it, and they were driving around. Before his execution in 1989, Bundy confessed to killing Wilcox. Bundy said that he grabbed the victim, Wilcox, near Holiday, and took her to his apartment, and he said he strangled her to death. He actually attempted to use road maps and shit to tell investigators where her body was buried, but it's never been recovered. And the case is now closed, and the family had a special memorial service in her honor, and Nancy's actually buried in Murray City Cemetery up in Murray, Salt Lake County, Utah, USA. And when Bundy was talking to investigators, he said he remembered disposing of the body. I did find some details here and an interview on this, so I'll actually put that interview into this fucking episode here for you guys too. Just for, waiting around and shit, right? Now, here goes a little bit more details on that. So it says, Ted Bundy was driving his tan Volkswagen Beetle through the suburbs of Salt Lake City on that same October evening. He was new to Utah at the time, having moved from Seattle a month prior to begin classes at the Utah Law School. Now, Bundy spotted Wilcox walking on a dimly lit street, and then she was ushered into a small orchard and restrained, and then he placed her in the car and had taken her to the apartment. And he stated that at the time that she was there, she was alive during half of it. Now, Bundy provided this whole confession, hoping police in Utah would locate and recover Wilcox's remains, and urge officials in Florida to postpone the impending execution. So this was later on, when he got caught and all that. And there are some folk here that say Bundy had ended up drowning her in his bathtub after she was assaulted and raped by him. And Bundy is a little bit foggy in all these details that night, too. He didn't know what he ended up doing with the body, but he knows that he drove and he buried her up some orchard many miles from the house where he killed her. But he instructed the detectives here to search along Nottingham Bullfrog Road. And he even said this to you, "I hope a serious attempt is mounted to find something." Now, it's possible Bundy wasn't able to give precise information because he was recalling murders from nearly 15 years before. During all this, Bundy told investigators, "My mind isn't as nimble as it used to be." And even all this shit here that he talked about Nancy Wilcox's fucking disappearance, murder, everything. All this was an audio tape confession that was recorded just days before his execution in 1989. And like I said, there's also a little bit of an interview here and an interrogation and what have you.
You encountered Nancy Wilcox? Do you remember what she was wearing, what she looked like?
I don't remember exactly what she was wearing. She was wearing, like, casual clothes. Wasn't wearing dress, wasn't dressed up, wearing slacks or a dress and jeans. Walking along the side of a road, poorly lit area, suburban. Years ago, I think I probably knew the street, but I didn't find a street map. But an outside chance I could show you. You don't have to have a street map. So.
No. Do you recall where it would have been from the university? So?
No, it would have been south. Considerably south.
East or west? East or west?
Oh, wait, excuse me, south. I get my directions all screwed up with that place.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of salt-like map here?
Well, of course, when you're going south, the mountains, the Wasatch Mountains are to the east. And there's homes built up alongside the valley and then out west.
Well, it would have been, it would have been south of the university, some distance south.
And you remember State Street, the main drag that goes all the way to, was it east or west of that?
Oh, it was east. South and east.
Considerably east?
Well, considerably east is up in the mountains.
Yeah.
Up in the benches. This wasn't up in the benches. This is south and east by how much? It was just by suburban, I don't mean new suburban. I mean, it looked like older suburban. You know, the houses have been around for a while. It wasn't under development. There were no sidewalks per se. I think it was just sort of a side area. There were no like storm sewers, curbs, things like this.
Were you able to have any conversation with her?
Not really. Not much. I mean, nothing noteworthy.
Was she carrying a purse, do you recall? Or?
Don't recall. Well, let me think.
So she was walking on the side of the road and you approached her and took her against her will?
Yeah, that's a good description. Yeah, basically. It was a fairly dark, particularly dark stretch of... it was a main roadway, but I mean, how do you describe it? But without any... with a street light, an old-style single-bulb street light every 3 or 4 poles now. So it was dark, and there was what looked like to be a small orchard. That's a very small residential orchard between these 2 houses, and she was ushered into there and restrained and then placed in the car and taken to the apartment.
The park?
The apartment.
Oh, apartment. Now, at what point would she have been killed? In the orchard or at your apartment?
The next day.
Now we talk about the same apartment, though?
Yes.
Do you recall anything unusual about her, anything that sticks out in your mind as far as her scars, marks, or... obviously, did you know her name at that time?
No, I didn't.
Was she able to talk about anything prior to the assault? You say you didn't have much of a conversation with her before.
No.
Where was she taken after the apartment?
That's what I'm trying to remember. That's what I'm looking. I need to look over the map. It's unclear to me right now. My state of mind was not good.
And just a couple more things in this case, sir. In July of 1974, this is a few months prior to her disappearance, Nancy had filed a report of rape and abduction with the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office. And she didn't tell too many people about this, like she didn't tell her family or anything about it, but this was just something that she confided to in her boyfriend. Nancy stated that a man between 25 and 30 years old had been coming to her workplace, the Arctic Circle, in 33 South and 20th East in Salt Lake City, and he was paying excessive amounts of attention to her. Now, she said this person offered her a ride home, but instead, he took her to an address near Mill Creek Canyon, and he raped her. She identified her alleged attacker as a married man with children. The man denied committing the rape and abduction, and after he passed the polygraph, police dismissed Nancy's report. So that's just a couple more details I found. And back in December of 74, a man named George K. was arrested for hitchhiking on the freeway to Provo. So while he was in jail, he identified Nancy's missing persons poster on a bulletin board that was in the police station. So he said he had seen this girl at the Flame Supper Club in Orem over the weekend. Now he told Provo PD that the girl he thought to be Nancy Wilcox was with another young blonde and two men on December 28th between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. So the police contacted the manager of the Flame Supper Club, told him of the missing report about Nancy and the possible sightings that were at his club. So the police asked him who the waitress was, bartenders and all that evening, and they were going to go up there and interview them. So they were going to meet at the Silver Dollar Lounge at 9:30 p.m., and he would have them all gathered there. So at 9:30 p.m., police went to the lounge in Springfield, and they interviewed the barmaids, the bartender, manager, all that. So police showed them the pictures of Nancy Wilcox and explained to them how she had been missing since October 1st, 1974. Now, they all felt it was Nancy that was in the Flame that Saturday night, and they had agreed that the two girls had been in the Silver Dollar Lounge a few times alone. Now, the bartender said that his son had dated the girl that was Nancy, and he could get the address. So he thought the girls were both divorcees, and they lived together up in Provo, and one of them had a small baby. So the police did a follow-up report from this. This was done by Ken Farnsworth of the Juvenile Division. This was on December 31st, 74. So we called the bartender who provided them with the girl's name and address. Police contacted one of their Provo officers to accompany them to the address, and they made contact. Both girls were actually sisters, and they lived together. One of the sisters was Cindy W. She was divorced and had a 1-year-old baby. And Cindy actually did resemble Nancy Wilcox. And both girls admitted to being in the Flame Club Saturday night with their boyfriends. And this whole thing was just a look-alike situation here, so this lead was eliminated. But unfortunately, no new leads in this case came up. And the family was just heartbroken, right? Like, Connie Wilcox said that her daughter's disappearance consumed her day and night. And this was at the first little bit of the case. She said this: I thought, what's going on? I didn't know what to think. I was just sick, really sick. I didn't know what to think. We were just clinging on, day after day, and there was nothing. And the family's life was further shattered when their son had died from a rare kidney disease 5 months after Nancy's disappearance. The only information that police got from Bundy on her case was just very vague. All he remembered was disposing the body after driving south on I-15 and then on a U-89. And it actually took him like 14 years to say something, right? Like he was just holding on to that information forever. And at one point, police thought that the word "Nottum" had meant something to Bundy here, because that was something that he seen when he left the highway, I guess a sign or what have you. And yeah, nothing was confirmed, and they closed their case, like I said. And it's been like 51 years since this all happened, and I mean, it sucks that it did. And there are some doubts from people over Bundy's claim that he brought the teenager back to his apartment. Bringing a victim back there to his rooming house was just a super risky move for Bundy on his part. There were other tenants in the building, just other tenants in the building and everything, right? So, I mean, super risky. Unless he brought them up, like, while they were still alive and shit, and he snuck them in, I don't know. And during one of his earlier third-person confessions, in that interview, he said, the killer may have murdered the teenager in the orchard after she raised her voice and began to struggle. But I mean, Bundy, as we know, was a narcissistic liar who liked to fuck with the authorities. So I guess we'll never know the entire truth on the matter, and that just fucking sucks. But I tried to cover this case here as well as I could, research this, and I went back and forth on my notes with a lot of this stuff, but unfortunately, there's more to cover, and we'll move on to the next victim here. And this was Melissa Smith. She was another Utah resident. On October 18th, 1974, there would be another victim, unfortunately. Now, that woman's name was Melissa Ann Smith. She was a 17-year-old at the time, and the prick ended up taking her life. And it's said here she was Bundy's 10th known murder victim. And she went missing while walking from a pizza restaurant up in Midvale, Utah, a suburb of Salt Lake City. She had been out meeting with a couple of her friends, and this was a pepperoni restaurant located at 669 East Center Street. She seen a guy trying to lift something into his vehicle as she was leaving, and he was struggling with this attempt. And this man we all know as Ted fucking Bundy. And we all know how this is going to go, because he used the same MO for many, many victims before. So he had a sling in his arm, and he played the whole broken arm scenario. So during the investigation, police checked up on every lead, every rumor, and every tip from folk here from like Brigham City all the way down to Richfield. And all police departments in the state were helping in the search for her. Now, Melissa was 5'3" tall. She weighed about 105 pounds. She had light brown hair and hazel-colored eyes. She was last seen wearing a blue flowered blouse with a heavy navy blue shirt and blue jeans, and brown shoes with laces. Now, a little about her. She was born July 4th of 1957 up in Utah. She was the daughter of the Midvale Chief of Police, Lewis Shirley Smith. That was her father. And he actually warned her about the dangers of the world. But unfortunately, even though she tried to avoid them, Bundy was fucking unavoidable. Now, her father was born March 10th, 1927, up in Midvale, Salt Lake County, Utah, USA. His parents were Don Carlos and Melissa Goff Smith. He married his wife Joan in Salt Lake City LDS Temple on October 8th of 1953. He was a veteran of World War II and an avid member of the LDS Church. So LDS means Latter-day Saints. And unfortunately, he passed from a heart attack at the age of 58 in the same community that he grew up in. But before his death, he was employed by Skaggs Alpha Beta Security. He was a graduate of the FBI Academy, and he's buried in Plot L 93-1 of Midvale City Cemetery. Her mother was Joan L. Lavorson Smith. She was born April 20th of 1934 in Salt Lake City. She passed December 18th, 2024, so she lived to be 90 years old and passed in Kearns, Salt Lake County, Utah. Now, Melissa also had a sister named Jolene Jo Smith Day. She was born August 9th, 1959 in Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County, Utah. And she passed October 12th of 2014 in Las Vegas, Clark County, Nevada. She lived to be 55. During her life, she married Timothy P. Day on September 6, 1978, and she lived in Las Vegas for like the last 25 years with her family. And it's just terrible. Like all of Melissa's family had died pretty young, all except the mom. She seemed to have lived a long life and all. Now, on Jolene's gravestone, it says, "Families are forever." And Midvale citizens actually pooled together and came up with $1,000 as a reward for any info. But unfortunately, that $1,000 wouldn't help any. Her nude, beaten, and strangled body was discovered by some deer hunters on a hillside in a wooded area. This is up in Summit Park. Now, her cause of death was strangulation/beating. She was raped and sodomized, and her cause of death was believed to be multiple brain hemorrhages, also suffering from blows to the head. But one of her stockings was around her neck, suggesting that she was also strangled. And oddly, she was believed to have died days after she disappeared, meaning she was held captive for some multiple days. And Bundy had visited her body and had sex with her remains after she was dead. Now, he did this a few times, and he also groomed her by shampooing her hair as she was dead, and he applied makeup to her body. And what can I say? He's just a weird fucking guy. I mean, that takes the cake on everything, right? And strangulation is the act of killing someone by pressing their throat so that they cannot breathe, to choke to death by compression to the throat, also with something such as like a hand or a rope. And I'll get into some of her autopsy here. Her autopsy report shows that she was covered in oak brush, one navy blue sock was used for the purpose of strangulation, and a blunt object was used on her, possibly a rock. Her body was discovered by Philip D. Hughes, reported on October 27, 74 at 2 p.m. So he called police there, and it was agreed upon that they would meet at the Skyline Cage, and then police would take it from there. It was Captain Howard and a Sheriff Robinson. And her body's now buried in Midvale City Cemetery up in Midvale, Salt Lake County, plot L-93-7. And her gravestone actually has something written on it. It says, "I don't believe in goodbye." Now, Melissa's case received extensive newspaper coverage. This is before and after she was found. Now, it was likely because of the connection to the chief of police. She was the second of 5 teenagers to disappear in the area. All these cases were believed to be connected. And after his capture, Bundy confessed to Melissa's rape and murder. He also described some of the certain rituals that he did, like washing their hair and applying makeup. Now, police interrogated and interviewed her friends over the course of the investigation as well. Now, they talked with several students from Hillcrest High School and students at the Continental Beauty Cottage. This is located at 5600 South 9th East Street. Interviews were conducted by Detective Ben Forbes and Detective Jerry Thompson of the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office. Now, they spoke to some of her friends and all that. They spoke to Pauline Wyman. She was born February 22nd in 1956, and she was employed at the Continental Beauty College. So she stated that she didn't know the victim very well and was unsure of the last days that she saw Melissa. Could have been a Friday. She went missing earlier in the day, but she's unsure. Now, her main friends were Julie Rushton and a Mindy Manning. They also worked at the beauty college, but they couldn't come up with any more details than that. Now, the next interview was Shauna Olson. She was born March 8th, 1955, and she was just a casual friend of Melissa. They met at the college. She wasn't too familiar about what friend she hung out with. She didn't know if she had a boyfriend, and the only thing that she knew was she was out one time at a party at Bernadette Burnham's place, located up in Draper. And this was either in the last week of September or the first week of October, and that party was one of mixed company. Now, it involved a few married people, some unmarried people, and some drinking and dancing. Nothing too fancy, right? She said Melissa talked to about 2 or 3 boys that were dancing, but was unaware of who the individuals were. And the next interview was Bernadette Burnham. She was born February 18th, 1950, and lived up in East Draper. She told police she didn't know Melissa that well, but she attended her party, and it was the first Friday night in October. It was held at her home, and her husband was there. She gave police a few names of who she remembered was there, and a few that hung out with Melissa. So, those that she could recall anyway. Now, she mentioned there was some alcohol involved, but nothing else. Melissa had arrived alone, but danced with a dude named Mike Christensen. Melissa and Mike both went outside for a period of about a half hour, and then she returned with some twigs and debris in her hair. Now, this Mike dude was 22 years old, but she didn't know where he had lived or where he had worked. But she knew that he hung out at the speed equipment shop located up in Murray. She remembered Melissa speaking to another guy named Bob. People nicknamed this dude Can of String Beans because he worked at Conoco Station up in Murray on 5900 South State Street. So I guess this guy was pretty skinny or whatever. Now, Melissa stayed at Bernadette's that night and got a ride home from her the next morning. And she said the last time she had seen her was at school, and she had zero clue for Melissa's plans later on that evening. Cops asked her if Melissa could have run away from home, and she said this was not a thing for her to do. And Bernadette was asked if friends were maybe hiding her or that she was someplace and she didn't want anybody knowing about, and she couldn't think of anywhere that she could be. Police had asked her if she thought anyone that she knew might be holding back information or anything like that, to which she said there's no way, and everybody wants to find her. And the detectives thought Bernadette was very helpful and that she actually wanted to help find Melissa. Now, next up to be interviewed was Julie Rushton. She was born May 15th, 1957. This was actually her second interview with police, and she was away from her folks at this time. So they had already conducted an interview with her father there at the Metropolitan Hall of Justice. Now, she was a senior from Hillcrest High School and a student at the beauty college, and she worked in a pizza place in Midvale, and she was Melissa's closest friend. She stated that the two had smoked pot before and that there was $10 that was in Melissa's purse at home that was given to her by her so they could purchase some pot. But the two weren't going to buy it on that Friday, the 18th, and they had no clue when they were going to get some. Julie had called Melissa's house at about 9 p.m. and had asked her to come over to the pizza place and chat, because she had a fight or some words with another girl here in regards to one of the boys that she went with, and she wanted to chat with somebody on the matter. So Melissa arrived around 9 p.m. or 9:30, and the two conversated for a bit, and a Cindy Howell was there with them. Now, Julie had been upset that night with Mindy Manning because she was going to stay at her house on this particular night, but Melissa couldn't get a hold of Mindy on the phone. And actually, Mindy had gone out with somebody else, and this actually upset Melissa because she totally turfed their plans. So Melissa left the pizza place a little after 9:30 or 10 p.m. at the latest. That's what Julie told police. So she had assumed she was just going to go straight home. Now, they were going to go for a coffee around midnight, but things didn't pan out due to somebody else picking up Julie and driving her home. So she didn't call Melissa to come over. She called her the next day, this was Saturday, and was informed by her mother that Melissa never came home that night. She also said she wouldn't run away from home or anything like that, and she told them of a time that Julie had talked her out of doing that one time, because she was going to run away. She said Melissa was one who would sit down and talk about her problems. Julie was then shown a photograph of Melissa, and police asked her if her hair color had been like that on the Friday, and her hair color was the same. Police asked Melissa if she wore like fake eyelashes and shit, and she stated that Melissa didn't like them. She also said Melissa wore makeup around her eyes, but not much more than that. She told them what Melissa was wearing on that night and that she didn't have her purse on her when she seen her. And she didn't know any girls that would have loaned her like fake eyelashes or anything of that sort. Melissa wasn't the one to borrow things off of other girls, like clothing or makeup, etc. They asked Melissa if they used anything other than pot, to which Julie stated the two had tried speed once, but they didn't care for it. So police asked them about the party at Bernadette's house, and Julie said Melissa went, but she didn't. All she heard was that Melissa had a good time, and there was a bit of booze there, and that Bernadette and Melissa didn't overly know each other that well. And to her knowledge, that was the only time that the two had hung out. So they asked police about Melissa's hitchhiking, or as they called it, thumbing a ride, to which Julie said yeah, but only on occasion. They didn't have a ride or anything like that, or, they would just hitchhike. Police asked if Melissa would have gotten in a car with a stranger, or if she was afraid of anyone, and Julie said that she didn't think Melissa was afraid of anyone, and she couldn't say for sure if she would get in the vehicle with somebody else or whatnot. Then Julie was asked if she knew anything about Melissa's sex life. So she stated to her knowledge, Melissa was still a virgin and would not give in all the way with a boy. Julie had mentioned that Melissa was closer to her than her own mother. And the only other person that Melissa was really close with was her sister Jolene. And no matter what issues arised, they would talk about them. She told the cops that she didn't see Melissa after she had left the pizza place that Friday the 18th, and that was the end of the interview. Now the next to be interviewed was a Michael J. Chappell. He goes to Hillcrest High School and was 16 years old at the time. Now he had a piss-poor attitude, poor attendance record, and it was noted that he was just a poor student. He said that he didn't know Melissa all that well, that she was just an acquaintance, and that was the only thing that he knew. The last time he spoke to her was Thursday night, October 17th. She had been standing with a blonde-haired girl on State Street, just north of June's Cafe, around 6 p.m., and he said that the both girls seemed to be like thumbing a ride. When he walked up, he noticed a buddy of his, this was Dallas Clark, who also went to Hillcrest, and he ended up standing there talking to them. He asked them if they wanted a ride home. Now, they said yes, and wanted a ride to JB's. They drove them down, and they got out at a gas station across from JB's, and that Dallas Clark dude had stayed with them. He stated that he doesn't have a car and wasn't driving. Now, he met up with a girl named Lori Conti, as they go to the same high school, and there was also a couple kids there named Mike Gusta and David Myers with them. He said that they might know the name of the girl that Melissa was with, but he did not, and that was pretty much all that he could tell them about her. The next to be interviewed was Lori Conti. She was born July 4th of 57, and she was a senior at Hillcrest High School. She was contacted at home by Detective Forbes, and her mother and sister were present. She said that she knew Melissa and her sister Jolene, and it was Thursday night that she had last seen her. She told police that she picked her up and her sister Jolene up on State Street around 7600 South, and then gave them a ride down to Murray. She mentioned talking to Dallas Clark, who got in, but he didn't get out with the girls at JB's. The cops asked her if it was for sure Jolene's sister that was with her, and she confirmed. And on Friday the 18th, Lori was on a date with a boy, and they were going north on State from 7800 South, and they see Melissa alone, and she was thumbing a ride between 9:30 and 10 p.m. Now, she knew this as her boyfriend picked her up around 9:30, and the two had just driven around for a little bit. She then gave police a description of what Melissa was wearing. Now, she had thought she had on blue Levi's and a windbreaker, to her recollection. But she said that she didn't know many of Melissa's friends, but said that she hung out with her sister quite often, and the other one was Julie Rushton. She did mention that they went to a youth conference one time up in the Logan area, and she had left with some Negro boys that night, and she didn't see her until either later that night or early the next morning. And when she did, Melissa had a bunch of hickeys on her and stuff. Now, Lori had said this was like a little bit of a shock to her, because she doesn't know anything about like the boys that she went with or any of her boyfriends. Only that she heard rumors that she smoked a bit of pot here and hung out with some boys sometimes. Lori also said that she and her mom didn't want this shit getting back to Melissa's parents, because they didn't want them to think they were talking ill or down about their missing daughter, because they didn't want to cause any issues with the family. So police made mention in the report that it took them a bit of time for them to bring up that information. Besides that, she heard nothing else, and police said that they would just do an interview with her later on down the road, because she was going on a trip to Paris with her folks. Now, the next up to be interviewed was Julie Tuller. The police interview went like this. She was a senior at Hillcrest High School. She mentioned that she saw Melissa and Murray at JB's restaurant at 10:30 p.m., and she was positive of the time because her boyfriend had picked her up around that time. She didn't know Melissa real well, but she knew her enough to say hello or speak to her or something like that, right? And so she said Melissa had walked in the door as another girl was coming in the restaurant, and she's not sure if the girl had been with her. The other girl was about 5'5". She had a small build, long hair down to the waist, and her hair was dark brown in color. She said that Melissa came in and went over by the cigarette machine. Now, she didn't see her buy any cigarettes at that time, but when she went back by the entrance and left through the door, she noticed that she was holding a pack of Marlboros in her hand. Fuck, I hope I said that right. Now, she did notice that as soon as Melissa entered, she also saw a car outside, and this was in the no parking zone. The individual in the car was wearing a cowboy hat, and she said normally when people park there, it doesn't take long for Murray police to roll up and give them a ticket. And I guess this dude had been the lucky one here because he was only parked there for a short amount of time. Now, she's not sure if Melissa had gotten out of the car or not, but when Melissa came in, the car was there. Melissa then left, and the other girl that came in had stayed. She didn't see her get into that vehicle, but it left as soon as she went outside. The car was a dark blue in color and a four-door Ford model. Now, she thought it was something like a Torino, like kind of like a big car. Had a nice muffler on it and a loud pipe upon takeoff. The license plate had a yellow horse on it, so it was like a out-of-state license plate. She thought possibly from Wyoming. She said Melissa was wearing Levi's, blue ones, and they had like a possible flare at the bottom. She wasn't too sure. She had a flowered shirt, kind of dark in color with flowers on it. She thought the sweater to be of like a knit material, one that kind of slips over your head. Next to speak to police was Jane Lynn Bogus. So she goes to Hillcrest, and she works at JB's up in Murray. Officers found out that she had problems at home and that she was a troubled child. The cop had asked for her as she was in school at the time, and the principal went to go get her. Then she said, "Who's here to see me? That goddamn Sergeant Cannon? I don't want to talk to any of his people. My dad informed me that I don't have to talk to them, so I'm not going to." All she said to them was that she was off at 3 to 4 from work, and that she didn't want to talk to him. Now, they ended up getting a little bit of information about that night out of her. She said, "The only thing I'm going to tell you is that Melissa came in about 10:30 p.m. with another girl. She had long blonde hair. She was a real hard looker." That's what she called her. And that was about it. It was also noted that the school had got a phone call from her dad, who said he didn't want her out of class to speak with police. The next to be interviewed was her sister, Jolene Smith. Now, when police originally tried to talk to her prior to this interview about the murder of her sister, Jolene replied, "I don't know what I can do for you. I've told Dad everything, and I'm tired of this bullshit that's going around." Now, they then asked her, what bullshit, right? She's like, "Rumors going around at school," and she stated that they weren't true. Police had apologized for the rumors and said that they weren't there to start more stories. They just wanted to get some info on her sister, and that was it, because they heard that the two were very close. They just wanted to know about the last time she'd seen her sister. Now, she mentioned Melissa was upset because she was going to go stay at Mindy Manning's, and was just really upset about getting stood up. Her sister said the two had argued time to time, but nothing too major. Police said that Julie Rushton had wanted to meet up at the pizza place to talk about some stuff, and Julie was having problems with a boyfriend and wanted to chat. Then Jolene said that she was going to go head downstairs to do some typing, and she heard a door slam, and Melissa was gone. And she gave them a description of what she was wearing. She was then asked her opinion on what might have happened to her sister. So she said she left the pizza place and went out boogieing until about midnight, and that somebody might have picked her up, I guess, and most likely had ripped her off or something like that, and that would be the only thing that she could think of. She was asked if her sister ever thumbed rides, like hitchhiked. Her sister replied, "No way." The police told them about that Dallas dude and his friend, so Jolene told them that that had been on a Wednesday night, not the night in question. Police had asked if Melissa had wore false eyelashes or anything like that, and she said she didn't own any. She did at one time look at some and wanted to buy some, but these were the ones where you put on one lash at a time, not the type that you glue to your eyes. She was informed that her sister had been wearing them, and she straight up called them liars. She didn't believe it, and she asked to see the pictures that they had. They asked her if her hair was different that night, and she looked through the pictures, and Jolene replied with, "I don't think so." But since her hair was up, it seemed that it was like a little bit shorter than what was in the picture. Her hair was done up in streaks, or frosted. They asked Jolene if her hair color was red at any time. Jolene said it depends on the lighting, and it looks like kind of red due to that maybe, but Melissa never had tinted hair. But she did mention that she heard rumors that her sister had gotten a haircut, and said that was impossible as her sister loved her hair and there was no way that she would fucking cut it. Then the officers hit a nerve when they asked if she knew anything about Melissa's sex life, and Jolene kind of went off on them for a little bit here, chewed their heads off type deal. But they got her calm a few moments later. She said, "My sister's goal in life was to stay a virgin until marriage." Then they asked if she used pot. She said, yeah, a couple of times, and a couple of years ago, she did try speed once, but she didn't like it. She was asked about her boyfriends, and Jolene's like, "Are you kidding? She had so many. I don't know them all. Besides, you probably talked to them all," she said. But she mentioned a boyfriend named Steve Merrill, who went to Cottonwood High School. Melissa mentioned him once in a while, but she didn't really know anything about him. She also mentioned another guy, Bill Mickelson, and she said she knew nothing about him. And there was also a dude named Butch Velarde, but she can't remember what she said about him. She did like a Mark Baxter, she said, and this dude drove a car, a 73 bright orange Demon. Now, she asked if Melissa went to any bars or anything like that, and Jolene said she hasn't been to one, but mentioned a couple times that she said she wanted to go to a bar. She also mentioned that Melissa would have never ran away from home because she would have made contact with her family, informing her of what's going on, etc. She also left home without her purse and her makeup, and she had all intentions of returning home that night. Police told her straight up that they wanted to find this guy and do what they have to do to get this thing resolved. Police said that anything that she tells them will go no farther than this room, unless it leads to like some part of the investigation that they have to use to apprehend this guy. You know, the one that killed her sister and shit. Police and her chatted a little bit more about their concern in the condition Melissa's body was found in. How it had makeup on, it was groomed, most likely by the killer. Her nails were clean and groomed, her hair was styled, the eyelashes, the fingernails were all polished. And she said that, she looked after her nails and stuff, clipped them, manicured them, filed them down, and so forth. Police said her fingernails were sharpened up. They looked pretty good, and they were like no scratches on them or anything like that. They weren't peeling, and even after she was left there, they looked extremely well taken care of. And Jolene had said she did them on the 18th. Cops didn't find her until the 27th, and that stuff would have had to been like reapplied, redone between that time frame. Now they mentioned the eyeshadow and how it appeared to be green. Jolene's like, she had green on? What do you mean? And then It appeared green to the officer, he said. She wore blue, Jolene said. Well, it had appeared to be green in color, said the cops. It also could have been blue. Now, one of the detectives, Detective Thompson, said this would have had to be applied every day, right? But this stuff was freshly put on. Jolene's answer was yeah. And that's the first thing that detective noticed when he got on the scene. And the false lashes that she had on, one of them had come off, and one ended up being on her leg, but the other one was still on. So police had thought she was somewhere where she had access to makeup, or some place that she had women's makeup. And if she was held against her will, or she was staying with somebody that might have had makeup, something like that, right? Because they had to think of all avenues of this crime. Now, because of the period of that time, from the time she had disappeared to the time that they found her, she had been someplace for 5 or 6 days, where she could have still been alive, and that someone that took her could have been like applying makeup or had access to the makeup that was used on her. Her hair, she wore that almost like Jolene's. It was just a little bit darker in color, more brown. And when police found her, the hair was more like reddish light and light reddish brown tint, kind of curly. So Jolene said her hair was streaked with permanent, and then it would go a little bit curly when the dye colored or frizzed out over time. So Jolene mentioned that if someone gave her sister the opportunity to fix herself up, that she would take it because she liked to look good. Then police asked about like the women who lived in Draper. That was Bernie there. I believe that she was a beautician, Jolene said. So Jolene said that she was, but she dropped out at some point, or she wasn't sure if she was still going or whatnot. Then they asked her about Mindy. They asked about her being upset and not being able to go there as originally planned. She said that Mindy was out messing around with friends that night. And they asked about like what she had heard from people at school and stuff. So she mentioned a student behind her said that she didn't see Melissa, but she said she did as to not get hassled by police. So one of the friends just made that up. Now, police said that's what puts people in bad positions when that happens. And Jolene said that there was another person that she thinks seen her, but was unsure if it had been her. And this was at the JB's restaurant. Now, the girl's name was Pat. Jolene said that she had no reason to lie, but she might have got mixed up because she didn't know Melissa all that well. Now, they asked about Judy Tueller, who had seen her that night. Jolene said that she didn't know her and tried to guess what she looked like. Now, they asked if Melissa smoked, if there was like a particular brand that she smoked. No, she would never buy any, said Jolene. But if somebody offered her one, she'd smoke it if she was pissed off or whatever. But besides that, she never knew of her purchasing any. So police replied, but she'd never go into a place and buy a package for any reason, right? No, Jolene said. Police told Jolene that she had been, in fact, in a restaurant and purchased cigarettes. So she thought, and she said if she did buy any, it would be a pack of Cools. And then police asked, would she go in and buy these for a boy? She was like, no. She'd make him go in and buy them himself, like she wouldn't do that. So they asked her if she had any clue about what happened to her sister. She replied with, well, I wish I knew. I don't know. You haven't the slightest idea what may have happened to your sister, they asked. She said, I think she was coming out of the pepperoni place and started to go home. Maybe somebody said, hey, or come here, something along those lines, right? So they wanted to talk to her. And then they grabbed her. And that's all I could think of, she said. She wouldn't be stuck up or anything like that. She would have said hello and go over and talk to them. She was very friendly like that. But she would never go off with somebody alone. A group of people, if like it was more girls than guys, maybe she would. But not just a random guy. If a stranger called her over to her car, she would go over and see who it was, but would never get in with them if she didn't know who it was. And she said that's what everybody should do. Don't get into cars with strangers or go to anyone that you don't know. If they try to take you, you fight as hard as you can. You yell, you scream to alert people nearby. And she said you just yell for help. Or sometimes you yell fire too because more people will come running. Because yelling fire is often recommended in emergency situations, particularly in a public place. Now, it's read that it tends to trigger more of like an immediate response and a widespread response, than yelling help. Because people are generally more inclined to investigate the cry of a fire, assuming that it's a dangerous situation and it requires immediate action. Unfortunately, help doesn't really work that well, I guess, because it's maybe perceived as a less urgent or personal matter, causing some to hesitate or avoid the involvement altogether. And in situations where immediate danger is present, such as like an assault or a threatening situation, yelling fire might be the most effective way to draw attention and potentially deter the aggressor. However, in other situations, yelling help might be more appropriate and less likely to cause unnecessary panic. So I guess it's just a little bit of info for you guys. And Jolene joked and said that the guy would have to be pretty good looking for her to even approach a random car. She wouldn't go over if the dude was like a crumb looking dude, she said. And cops said something interesting here. They said, since your dad's a cop, what if somebody approached her and showed her a police badge and he wasn't in uniform, but just plain clothes, and said that he needed to talk to her? Do you think that she would get into the car, or something of that nature? Jolene said, I don't know what she'd do. She didn't like cops all that much, but she might get in, as it's something that most people would normally do. And now, the $1,000,000 questions here, ladies and gentlemen. They asked her if she ever heard of a man named Ted. Police asked her, upon your travels, have you ever seen a man who had his arm in a sling or a broken arm, or seemed a nice looking fella? And she thought for a moment here, and then they asked her if Melissa went missing for those 5 or 6 days, would she try and contact her? Yeah, definitely, she said. Melissa wouldn't put people through hell if she ran off to make somebody mad or something like that. She would have still attended school and all that. She still would have came back the next day or something. She wasn't that way. She would get in contact with her family, she said. She wouldn't let her mother and father worry about her one bit. Now, police just wanted to decipher if she had ran off or had been taken hostage by somebody. So they showed her the composite drawing of Ted Bundy that was made up after the Lake Sammamish abductions. And Jolene looked at it and said it wasn't the clearest of pictures. So police grabbed another one and they showed her. She said, he looks familiar. This guy live in Washington or something, she asked. Yeah, he did live in Washington, they replied. Do you know if he's ever been to Utah, she asked. We don't know if he's been to Utah or not. Police told Jolene that Melissa had eaten about an hour or two after she had been killed. What did she like to eat, they asked. Jolene just replied with, coffee. Did she drink milk malts or shakes? No, she said. Police asked her if Melissa ever noticed any strange vehicles following them or, going on late nights or anything. No, she replied. So they asked if she remembered the time that she left the house that night on the 18th. Jolene mentioned that they were supposed to go together, but her sister was upset, so Jolene said to her, quit your bitching. Then Julie had called her crying and all that, and then she heard the door slam after a bit of pacing, and she left, and her sister's like, great, she left without me. Police asked her if she would have went to the house she was supposed to stay at that night, but got stood up. Jolene said no, she wouldn't go looking for them. She had more pride than that. She mentioned that she went to the Pepperoni, located about a mile from her house, give or take, so it would have taken her 15 minutes to get there. So police knew this was the last place that she was and was seen by everybody in there. So she ended up talking to Julie, who calmed her down, and then she leaves, and no one ever sees her again, making her arrival there about 9:25 or 9:30. So the time that she left was about 10 or 10:30, and that was the end of the interview with police. So a little earlier in the episode, I kind of briefly went through the autopsy here, how she was found and all that, but I'll give you full detail here. So The autopsy was performed by a Dr. Sir J. Moore, and this was the state medical examiner. So the body was found on the south slope in the trees and would have been in the shade most of the day. And there's no weather station located at Summit Park where the victim had been found. However, the elevation there was I believe 74,000 feet. So her body was found in new condition with the exception of a single strand of beige yellow beads around her neck and one navy blue stocking, which had been tied around the victim's neck and knotted at the back and used for the purpose of strangulation. And the external signs of injuries were as follows. At the back of her head, almost in the center, is a gaping wound through the scalp to the skull. This wound is approximately 1/2 inch wide and is approximately 1 inch long. On the left side of her cheek, there is a puncture wound approximately 1/4 inch in circumference and penetrating into the side of the face, approximately 1/2 inch. The front of the body shows not too much signs of injury other than a bruise in the area of the right hip. And on the left side, from the toe extending up into the area of the abdomen, are what appears to be the bites of insects. Now on top of both sides of each shoulder blade, extending about down towards the waistline, are heavy abrasions, which in Dr. Moore's opinion were post-mortem, meaning that's something that happens after death. Now in the small of her back and over the buttocks are also heavy abrasions and appear to have been done before death. These abrasions run in full length of the buttocks, and in the case of the right side, run down about mid-thigh. There are further abrasions around the knee, extending approximately 3 inches below the knee on the right leg. There's also a bruise on the left wrist, although most of the body has pieces of dirt adhering to it. That both of the feet are exceptionally clean, with the exception of a small amount of dirt on the right heel. At this time during the autopsy, the stocking around the neck of the victim was cut off, and it was observed that the stocking is a navy blue knot material with a knit elastic top, approximately 2.5 inches long. The knot at the back of the neck appears to be tied as a granny knot. So, those that don't know, a granny knot can be constructed from two identical trefoil knots, which must either be both left-handed or both right-handed. Each of the two knots is cut, and the loose ends are joined together pairwise. This resulting in connecting some is a granny knot. So there you go. And several head hairs are interwoven through the knot. On the right side cheekbone are two separated and distinct lacerations, each running about 2 inches long. Also, above the right breast there are two small abrasions that start out very mild, with a reddish discoloration, which run from the breast towards the sternum. Their length is approximately 1.5 inches, and the color deepens towards the back of the abrasion to a deep purplish black. Internal sign of injury: the gaping wound previously described in the back of the head goes through the scalp to the bone of the skull, but does not make penetration through the skull, but causes skull fracture and brain hemorrhage. And in the throat area, there are also signs of hemorrhage due to strangulation. No bones in any of the limbs or the ribs appear to be broken. And it should be noted at this time the stomach was also full, the contents which appear to be not made up of any solid type of food, but more of a variety of milkshake or some similar type milk fluid. So that's the whole reason why they asked her if she had a milkshake or anything like that, because that's what they found in her body after the autopsy, unfortunately. So taken into evidence during the autopsy are the following listed items: one navy blue sock, samples of a variety of twigs, shrubs, and leaves that were entwined in the victim's hair, one black comb used to comb the pubic hair of the victim, a sample of dirt, two small black hairs from the abdomen of the victim, a sample of dirt from the right buttocks of the victim, a sample of the victim's pubic hair. There was a false eyelash which was removed from the victim's right lower leg, a sample of dirt from the left hip of the victim, a sample of dirt from the left buttocks of the victim, a wad of what appears to be chewing gum or bubble gum removed from the victim's mouth, a sample of dirt from the back of the victim. There was a sample of dirt from the right heel of the victim, a necklace made of wooden beads, which are mostly yellowish in color and interspaced with red and green beads every 2 or 3 inches. Again, there was another hair sample from the victim's pubic hair, a sample of the victim's head hair, fingernails from the right hand, fingernails from the victim's left hand, toenails from the right foot, and toenails from the left foot. All the above was turned over to Sheriff Robinson to be retained as evidence in this case. Now, October 31st, 1974, a toxology report was also done. There was a question that came up there that there was carbon monoxide that may have been presented in the body, and it was looked into, and they actually found none. Now, there was also 0 hemoglobin count. Dr. Moore informed an officer that possibly as much as 10 pints of blood had drained from the body to get such a low hemoglobin count. There was sperm found in the vagina, and the acid phosphate tests had shown a unit of 85 in the vagina, 50 in the rectum, and 35 in the mouth. Blood alcohol tests were negative. Tests for any drugs were also shown negative. And it should be noted here that the information from the parents of Melissa Smith indicated that she was taking Dristan and Contac for a cold that she had, but there were no signs of either of those drugs present, as they could have dissipated from the body had she not taken it in 72 hours prior to her death. The afternoon of November 6, 1974, detectives turned over vaginal swabs, rectal swabs, and swabs of the mouth that were taken, and these were forwarded by the FBI in an attempt to determine the blood type from the sperm present, especially in the vaginal swab. Now these were all gathered up and sent to the FBI labs up in Washington, D.C. So the items that they sent, so fucking vaginal swab, anal swab, oral swab 1 and 2, left and right fingernail clippings, left and right toenail clippings. They sent in dirt, hair, and a bug from her abdomen, combings from the pubic area, a skin sample from the head wound, sample of the victim's head hair, and a sample of the victim's pubic hair. And what they wanted them to find was male sperm off of the vaginal and the oral swab. So they wanted them to also examine all clippings of foreign matter, examine the hair to identify the perpetrator, examine the combings of her pubic hair and, see if there was any foreign hair and stuff. They wanted them to examine the skin sample. This is for particles to find out what blunt instrument had been used to kill her. And examine the head hair for foreign hair dyes, like different fiber and signs the hair have been dyed or tinted, if the signs are present. And this would try to determine the brand name and the time that has elapsed since it was dyed or streaked, and to determine if the knot had been tied by a left or right-handed person. So that's just what they needed the FBI to figure out, right? Now they also noted there would be signs the victim could have been killed elsewhere and then transported to that location. Now, death had occurred between 48 hours and 72 hours after the body was discovered. There are no suspects at this time, and they asked to put a rush on the examination, and they would be willing to collect calls on the matter, so they would pay for this shit, right? Now, the results came back not long after. No semen was found in the items, the vaginal, anal, or oral, and no hair particles found in the nail clippings. Only a few textile fiber fragments, consisting of blue cotton fiber fragments, and 1 light green, and 1 red cotton fiber, and 1 green woolen fiber. But due to their size, they were limited value for microscopic comparison purposes. They had found a number of brown pubic hairs of Caucasian origin that were found in the comb. None of the hairs were marked as similar with respect to microscopic characteristics to the remaining hairs. It would therefore appear that most, if not all, of these hairs originated from the victim's body. However, in the event a suspect is developed, a known pubic hair sample should be submitted for further comparison with the combing scent, and no extraneous debris was found in the skin from the head wound. The hairs caught in the knot were numerous brown to dark brown hairs, and the knot that was tied, they could not determine if it was tied by a left or right-handed person, unfortunately. So, there you have it, folks. Back to square fucking one. The items were then returned to the department. So the parents went down to identify the body. They left their home at 180 Fern Drive, Midvale, Utah. Mrs. Smith was left in the emergency ward while Mr. Smith observed the body of the victim for several minutes and then made a statement. He said, "I think that's my daughter, but I'm just not sure." He observed the wood bead necklace that was still around the victim's neck, and he stated that it was very similar to the necklace that his daughter had owned, but the one strand that his daughter had, he thought had 2 strands of beads instead of the single strand. But he stated his wife would be able to identify it better than him. Now, since he wasn't able to give a positive ID, police called Dr. Gar J. Vincent. This guy's a dentist at 4845 Highland Drive, and Dr. Clyde H. Kuhn from 19th East Center Street up in Midvale. So Mr. Smith had informed us that the dentist had performed work on his daughter's teeth after they had been in contact. So they went to their offices, they got their dental charts, and they met them in the autopsy room. And this was at the University of Utah Hospital. So after examining the mouth of the victim, they both identified the dental work that they had done on her and found it to be identical to that of the victim. So about the same time as this, Dr. Moore had also discovered a small, brown, irregular birthmark on the lower left back of the victim that had been previously described to them by Mrs. Smith. The birthmark was hard to see at first because of the multiple scrapes and everything and the abrasions that covered almost the entire back of the victim. The necklace was photographed while it was still around her neck, and afterwards it was removed and shown to Mrs. Smith, which then made a positive ID, but stated originally it did have 2 strands, but Melissa cut 1 strand off, leaving a singular strand. So she further identified it by a brown thread approximately 3/4 of an inch long, which she said the price tag had once been attached to, and that she herself had cut it off, but had forgotten to remove the brown thread. So, therefore, because of the birthmark, the dental work, and the necklace, visual ID of the body was made. But police had some more investigating to do, right? To help bring the man who did this to fucking justice. Now they had some more stuff to look over, so the case wasn't just solved yet. And little did police know, there would be another victim that would turn up some 13 days later. This would be on October 31st, 1974. And even though we all know it was Bundy who killed Melissa, and very brutally, I might add, this didn't stop him from mingling with the social aspects of everyday life in between, right? Like this guy could just flick it on, flick it off like a switch, right? Kill somebody, go back to society like nothing fucking happened. And in addition to hiding behind the normalcy in his private life, Bundy also managed to evade capture in the shadows of universities, churches, law enforcement agencies, shit like that, right? And later on, he became a church member of the Church of Latter-day Saints. Now, his commitment for those endeavors cast Bundy in like a really positive light, and all those he interacted with, nobody thought twice about all the evil things that he was doing behind the scenes, right? People were like, nah, man, this dude's just like a handsome young man that seemed to have his life pretty much in order. There was a dude, Michael Priest, this is Bundy's former LDS branch president. This dude says that he came to the activities, he came to the church meetings, and he responded in a positive way. And although it's said that Bundy pretty much ignored like most of the church restrictions and shit, Bundy just preyed on people's good nature. Bundy fucking had people gravitate to him due to his seemingly good nature, man. That's fucking crazy. Now, Bundy expressed an interest in the church, and eventually he was baptized. Figure that one out. No, he was just a fucking regular old Shirley Church, right? Taking it up with everybody. But if only people knew the real him. I believe that he made some comment later on. It kind of goes like this. This is after his apprehension and shit. He goes, "The ultimate possession was in fact the taking of the life, and then the physical possession of the remains. And murder is not just a crime of lust or violence. It becomes possession. They are part of you. The victim becomes a part of you. And you, the two, are forever one. And the grounds where you kill them or leave them become sacred to you, and you will always be drawn back to them." Yeah, yeah. I'm sure God will surely make them fucking righteous as fuck, you know? And we'll just look past those fucking comments, right? But, like, it was Utah that Bundy was drawn to, right? Like, Bundy mentioned this later on, saying that, "I loved Utah. I decided I was moving down there September of 74. I hopped on an interstate going south towards Provo. And he said, all of a sudden, I felt almost euphoric. I just looked out the window, watched the scenery, and dreamed and reminisced and generally maintained a real good feeling I had all the way into Utah." And there are also a few people that say that Utah didn't play a supporting role in the story of serial killer Ted Bundy. It just took fucking center stage. And with that, folks, I think I'll wind down here and I will end this episode here. And I'll go on with his next victim here. That would be Laura Ann Amy. And she would have been kidnapped, raped, and murdered. She was 17. And yeah, this girl's fucking face is beaten beyond recognition, right? So I'll get into that on the next episode. I want to thank you very much for tuning in to Twisted Tales. Have a wonderful night, folks.
Twisted Tales.